Belal Muhammad just became one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet. Tom Aspinall is still, to this day, one of the top 3, probably top 2, maybe the most dangerous human to ever walk on Earth. And there's not been many that have flown. Bobby Green shot a takedown on Paddy Pimblett. Muhammad Mokaev just got catapulted from the promotion. And it's time for me to give my recap of this entire UK card. All right, really good card, solid card. Most of the fights were great. A big upset in the main event, something that a lot of people didn't expect to happen. Tom Aspinall still has the shortest average fight time in UFC history, which is just insane. And the pressure is on Jon Jones. Guys, timestamps are in the description if you want to hear a take of mine on a particular one of these fights, but we may as well get to the big co-main event heavyweight fight since I already broke down the main event in its own individual video. We'll break down the main event after we break down this co-main event. But let's talk about the co-main event because I haven't talked about it yet. Tom Aspinall knocked out Curtis Blaydes in basically the exact same amount of time it took for him to knock out Sergey Pavlovich. Tom Aspinall's last 3 fights have all ended within the first minute and 10 seconds of a fight. Like this has never before been done. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. It's one thing for people to go out there and get a first minute KO in their first couple of fights against unranked fighters. It's another, I know it's heavyweight, but still Tom Aspinall is a heavyweight. This is his division. It's another thing to be fighting people and finishing them in a minute, like at the highest level in the top 5, and you're still consistently doing it. The last 3 fights he's had, they've all been finished in a minute. They're all ranked. I was thinking about the Volkov fight that he had where he didn't knock him out. He submitted him. And I was like, damn, I guess he took Volkov into the second round. He didn't. He finished Volkov in the first round. The Volkov fight went like 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes. It went so much longer, and it was still finished in the first. It went so much longer than these other fights that we've been seeing recently from Aspinall that it feels like that went into the deep waters of a fight. When a 3.5 minute fight feels like it's a long fight for Tom Aspinall, you know that this dude is like on another level. I mean, he's uncommon amongst the most uncommon heavyweights. Tom Aspinall is never going to fight Jon Jones. Jon Jones, there's no chance he's fighting Tom Aspinall. Maybe the UFC is going to tell Jon Jones, listen, Aspinall's done so much, we're not going to make the Stipe fight. You can either sail off into the sunset and retire, or you got to fight Aspinall. But I don't think the UFC is going to do that. Dana White is gung-ho about making the Stipe-Miocic matchup. And I think Tom Aspinall is going to end up fighting the winner of Volkov and Gane. And if he beats the winner of that, if it's Gane, he's basically cleared out the division. Then we have an Alex Pereira fight. And even if Alex Pereira loses to Magomed Ankalaev, he could just move up like he did after he lost at middleweight and got brutally KO'd by Adesanya. We are going to get an Alex Pereira versus Tom Aspinall matchup in the future, even if Alex loses his next fight. It won't be as hyped, but it's still there. We have a Gane fight, okay? We have an Alex Pereira fight. There may be other heavyweights in the future. We may see a Pavlovich rematch. You never know. Tom Aspinall is ruling with an iron fist. He's active. He's still young. And this dude is one of the most exciting champions the UFC has ever had. So the heavyweight division is in good hands. And again, we got to talk about the fight itself, okay? Because the fight was actually kind of interesting. There were some weird moments. There were some hairy moments where Curtis Blaydes was landing some long, wiry 1-2s down the pipe. Curtis Blaydes was catching Tom Aspinall at the end of exchanges with big looping punches. And remember the first fight that they had, even though it ended in like 15 seconds, there were moments where it looked like Blaydes was getting close to landing on the chin of Tom Aspinall. Blaydes has the reach advantage, and it looked like in that first fight that he was getting awfully close to the target. Well, he was landing on the target. And there were moments that had me worried if someone that wanted Aspinall to win, that Blaydes was going to tag him and drop him. Aspinall ate a couple of the punches, rolled with a few of them. His defense is still a little bit worrisome, especially if you're thinking about a matchup with Alex Pereira in the future. If Aspinall goes out there and entertains the striking, if he's entertaining the striking as much as he did with Blaydes tonight against Alex Pereira, which doesn't seem like something he would do, but it's only a minute of striking that he gave us tonight. If he did that with Alex Pereira, I could see Pereira catching him and dropping him with a left hook coming in. If Pereira's catching Yuri Prohaska coming in, I think he could potentially catch Tom Aspinall coming in. Would Aspinall stand with him? I don't know, but his defense doesn't look that great. Okay, that's the only knock on his game, but he still was able to roll with the punches. And all it takes for this guy, all it takes for Tom Aspinall is to land one punch, one solid punch. And it wasn't even a right hand. It wasn't even a power right hand, clobbering right hand that put down Curtis Blaydes. It was actually a stiff jab. Then a right hand over the top that sent Curtis Blaydes flying to the octagon. It took Pavlovich maybe like 50 solid significant strikes to get the same reaction once. Aspinall did it with the first solid right hand. This dude is probably one of the heaviest hitters we've ever seen. And jumped on Curtis Blaydes. Blaydes had his face down in the canvas. Aspinall was on top of him, bobbling his head around the canvas. Watching it live, I thought it was a good stoppage. Watching it back, I think it may have been a little bit early. Blaydes was working his way back up, but I think Aspinall would have finished him a couple of seconds later, would have put him out cold if he had separated and tried to, knock Curtis Blaydes off balance while he's getting up to his feet. I think that fight was headed towards an unconscious KO on Curtis Blaydes. So Aspinall, yet again, is the shortest average fight time record holder in the UFC. And it's not like this guy's only had a couple of fights. This dude has had like 9 fights in the UFC. And his fight times are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. He had longer fights against like the cans that he was facing early on in his career. And as he raises up in competition against Curtis Blaydes, against Pavlovich, his fights are getting shorter and shorter. It is insane. I know it's heavyweight, but nobody else does this at heavyweight. Francis Ngannou knocks out Stipe in the second round. Francis Ngannou knocks out Overeem like 3-4 minutes into the first round. I mean, Francis was the guy that was putting people away early, right? Against Junior Dos Santos, against Cain Velasquez, but Aspinall's doing this against guys that are in their prime, that aren't old fighters, and he's doing it even faster. I don't think the guys at the Salty Spittoon have an ability to beat this guy. Now, if he goes out there and takes the path of least resistance against the best fighters in the world, he probably wins every single time. He probably beats Alex Pereira if he takes the path of least resistance. Okay? If he stands with Alex Pereira, it's a 50-50. Alex could knock him out. Okay? I would even favor Alex a little bit, but my point is, he could take down Alex Pereira. This dude has a submission game as well. He's insanely explosive. He's strong for the division. Jones, maybe? I mean, that's the fight that we'll never see, but we're really grasping at straws. I know this seems like kind of a silly conversation, but you kind of have to take into account, like, this is the modern era of the UFC. Even though the heavyweight division has evolved the least out of all the divisions in MMA, it still is, like, a decent heavyweight division. Like, it's not gotten a lot worse. Okay, it's not gotten worse. It's probably just as good, if not a little bit better, than it was 10, 15 years ago. The best fighter that's dominating the top 5, like the best heavyweights in the world that are getting dominated by this one guy, this could literally be the best fighter ever. It's not an exaggeration. I don't want to hear about Mike Tyson. I don't want to hear about, 191-pound Muhammad Ali. And I don't want to hear about, the freaking salty, the Salty Spittoon Cowboys, or the fucking 165-pound Spartans with their pancreas. All right, let's get out of that mindset and let's just be real. I just think the UFC needs to really recognize that this is a once-in-a-lifetime talent that's finishing people this quickly, and they should be screaming from the mountaintop about this dude, telling the world how insane their heavyweight champion is, because I know that UFC heavyweight champions aren't as hyped up as boxing heavyweight champions, and part of that is because boxing is bigger. It's been around for longer. Heavyweight boxing, that is. I think the UFC is just as big as boxing now, but heavyweight boxing is like marquee boxing. But I think it's time that the UFC hypes up their heavyweight champions a lot, okay? Because it's usually like the lightweight class that's the most marquee weight class. I think they should hype up the heavyweight champ a little bit more. Stipe wasn't so easy to promote, was tough to work with at times for the UFC, but think about all the heavyweight champions. They've not been that hyped. Brock Lesnar was a hyped up champ. John Jones is hyped up by Dana White, but he's only fought once at heavyweight. He's been inactive. It's not like there's a lot going on with John Jones. But either way, let's get on to the next matchup. Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. Insane performance from Belal Muhammad. I didn't really think about this until after I posted my recap video, but Leon Edwards is like a top 4 pound-for-pound fighter. I think it's right now Mokaev. I think you've got Leon in there. I think you have Jones in there. Maybe there's, who else? What other fighters are pound for pound? I mean, I honestly think Leon's like top 4, top 3 pound for pound fighters. Belal Muhammad just beat him. And the thing is, even though Leon Edwards wasn't like a dominant champion, you could tell that Leon was well-rounded. Like, he's a solid grappler. He even out-grappled Belal Muhammad in the 3rd round of this fight tonight. He has underrated grappling, good jiu-jitsu, good ability to get up to his feet. He's got very clean striking. Like, he's a sharpshooter. He's perfect with his technique. I've compared him to like a drone in Star Wars, or a UFC bot on UFC 4 that just has, you know, impossible level of difficulty and like insane levels of defense to where you can hardly hit them clean. And it's frustrating to beat them. Leon Edwards is like a perfect technique fighter. And Belal Muhammad outstruck him, outboxed him. Like, the striking exchanges were close. They were 100%. But Belal Muhammad made it a little bit dirty, brought Leon Edwards into a dogfight, and outboxed him and outlanded him. And when Leon would land a kick, Belal would land 2 jabs. And when Leon would counter, Belal would land a right hand and a body shot. Belal Muhammad would throw head kicks up. And, like, he made it a dirty, gritty fight and outlanded Leon Edwards on the feet, which is insane. It's crazy. And he outgrappled Leon Edwards. And I know that pressure is something that we knew could kind of get to Edwards, but for Belal Muhammad to actually go out there and do it perfectly is really, really crazy to watch, especially given that he's 36 years old. And similar to Leon, he's never been the most dominant fighter. But his game planning has always been something that we've recognized as solid. Like, his game plan for Sean Brady was good. His game plan for Wonderboy and Vicente Luque. Belal Muhammad's got a good fight IQ, and he's got good toughness, right? Like Colby Covington, we know he's got cardio. We know he has the grappling, but just didn't have the grit to go out there, bite down on the mouthpiece, and fucking move forward. And fair enough. He may have hurt his foot early in that fight, but still, even when it came to the wrestling exchanges, I mean, he just couldn't get anything going. And from the moment that fight started, he was backing up against the fence. Colby, that is. Like, Belal Muhammad, from the moment this fight started, ran at Leon Edwards and got in his face and made it a dirty fight. Leon Edwards is a top 4, top 3 pound-for-pound fighter on the planet. That is crazy to watch Belal pull it off. Insane levels of strength, though, and insane cardio. I mean, it's unreal, really. Like, it actually is. How is he pulling it off at 36 is the question. I mean, Belal Muhammad, I remember 2 years ago, people were like, damn, how did this guy make this insane physical transformation? And they were saying that in 2021. People were talking about how he's made like a crazy physical transformation. And now we're seeing it. He's continuing to evolve. He's getting leaner and more massive every time he cuts weight. Maybe it's just the weight cut's getting harder and he's just a bigger person. But I don't know. Belal's strength and conditioning is insane. Like, this dude was picking up Leon Edwards, dunking him on his head, like putting a crazy pace on him the whole fight. And again, people that are saying things like Leon Edwards looked like he had an off night, this is just how Leon Edwards looks when people put pressure on him and he doesn't knock them out. Leon Edwards had done enough in his career by beating Kamaru twice, getting a win over Colby, wins over guys like RDA, Donald Cerrone. He had a bunch of good wins. He had done enough to be a top 5 welterweight of all time. I'm thinking, where does this put Belal Muhammad? Because he's been saying things like, one more win and I'm up there as the 2nd best welterweight of all time resume-wise. I'm 2nd all time. Like, past Kamaru Usman, which I don't know about that yet. But he did beat a prime Leon Edwards. And Leon Edwards is looked at as one of the best fighters in the UFC. To be honest, I guess maybe Leon may have been a tad bit overrated. To be fair, Colby was old, a little bit washed, had ring rust. Usman was winning the first fight, or the second fight, I mean, and fair enough. Usman was still a decent version of himself in that rematch or trilogy that he had with Leon, but Leon's not really been dominant as a champ. So in hindsight, which hindsight's always 20/20, this is something we could have seen coming potentially. I just didn't really know if it was going to be Belal. I think that's what it kind of is. We could have seen someone beating Leon with a dogfight and pressure, just didn't think it was going to be Belal who was able to put it all together perfectly, because Belal, throughout his career, has been a guy that skirts around the outside of the octagon, is a little bit skittish on the feet at times, So it's rare that we see Belal like written down and going after it. And he did it against Sean Brady, but a lot of us were saying, including myself, well, you can do it against Brady, but you're going to be way more respectful of Leon Edwards because he's fast and he's a sharpshooter, right? But no, Belal fucking went after it. So respect to Belal for like earning this victory. So I'm looking forward to his next fight. If it's against Usman, that would be sick. My ideal world, we have Belal fight Usman. I know Usman is coming off of a couple losses to Leon at welterweight, and some of us may dispute his title fight. Like, I get it if you guys wouldn't want to see him fight for the title, but the reason why I wouldn't mind it is because I think it'd be an entertaining fight. Belal's talking about himself being one of the welterweight GOATs, and I think you got to beat a guy like Kamaru, right? And it's not like Belal's this 31-year-old and we're putting him up against old man Usman. He's 36. He's going to be 37 soon anyway. So both of them are kind of old. And also, I want to see Shavkat and JDM. I feel like both of those guys haven't earned a title fight 100% yet. Shavkat has been inactive. His last win was over Wonderboy, who's not that highly ranked anymore. And JDM, his last win was over Gilbert Burns, which is great. But I just think that's the fight to make. Or maybe you could do Shavkat versus Belal. You know, whatever you do with Belal next, it will be entertaining. And Leon, I think he should fight a guy like Ian Gary. Leon versus Gary, a little bit of a story behind that fight. That should be pretty entertaining. Or maybe Leon versus Wonderboy Thompson. Okay? But let's get on to the next fight. Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett. Bobby Green shoots a takedown on Paddy Pimblett, which is just insane. Now, the first thing I need to say is Paddy Pimblett did a great job. He obviously put Bobby Green to sleep. Green is not a guy that's going to tap, so that's always, you know, I mean, he's tough for sure, but Paddy Pimblett fucking put him unconscious and subbed him and almost broke his arm while he choked him unconscious. So Paddy Pimblett had an insane win. Apparently he got like 2 bonuses. I don't know if that's actually true, but someone was saying in my chat that he got like 2 $100,000 bonuses, which is crazy. He needed this win. He needed a big win, and he needed a finish. I thought Green was going to win. Green was, in my opinion, winning. Like, he was landing oblique kicks. He was landing side kicks. He was talking shit. He was just getting going on the feet. Paddy Pimblett hadn't shot a takedown. And Bobby Green shoots a literal double leg takedown, level changes. And if you were confused as to whether it was really a level change or just a trip, he then tries to go and tries to commit to a single leg. So he goes double leg, single leg immediately. That's actually a takedown attempt from Bobby Green. I don't think anyone that thought Bobby Green was going to win this fight thought he was going to shoot a takedown. There was some talk between these guys about who the better grappler was. Bobby Green was talking about how he was out-grappling Jordan Levitt and had submitted Levitt, and that Paddy Pimblett's win over Levitt ain't that impressive. And Bobby Green was flexing that he was a brown belt, and Paddy Pimblett was saying, mate, I earned my brown belt when I was like 22 years old. That's not impressive. Bobby Green, even though he's the guy that will always talk about, man, I just want to stand and bang, and you'll never see me shoot a takedown. I only want to put on shows for the fans. Even though he's always saying that 99% of the time, which again, it's like, you don't expect Bobby Green to shoot a takedown. It is kind of a Bobby Green thing to go out there and try to fucking prove a point with Paddy Pimblett in the first round by shooting a takedown. Paddy Pimblett capitalized off of it because he's got a nasty submission game. Do I think Paddy Pimblett beats Moicano? Do I think Paddy Pimblett beats Benoit Saint-Denis? Do I think Paddy Pimblett beats Rafael Fiziev? No. But, I mean, come on, man. Bobby Green shooting a takedown on Paddy Pimblett? Are you fucking kidding me? It's insane. What is this guy doing? Like, we didn't even see what the striking would play out. Maybe Paddy would have KO'd him eventually. But it's just like, well, of course you put yourself in a losing position if you're shooting a takedown on Paddy Pimblett. But Paddy Pimblett is the one that capitalized off of it. Paddy Pimblett is the one that actually fucking made it work and got the submission. A lot of other fighters, they wouldn't have been able to do that. A lot of other fighters, they would have pulled the guillotine and then Bobby would have gotten out. Paddy Pimblett got it done by submission. King Green, Bobby Green, gets slayed by Paddy Pimblett, who we can now call the King Slayer. All right. Amazing win for Paddy Pimblett. And he is the real deal. I mean, you will have to say that. Like, submitting Bobby Green, I think it's the first time he's ever been submitted. That is very impressive. But Bobby Green just made a horrible decision. Great win for Paddy Pimblett. He is going to be ranked. There were questions about whether or not Paddy would be ranked in his career, and he is now probably going to get a ranked opponent. He called out Renato Moicano. If Moicano beats Benoit Saint-Denis, I would love to see that fight. It'd be a huge jump up in competition for Pimblett. I don't think he would win necessarily, but listen, Pimblett is a decent fighter. All right, he is a decent fighter, and Green is a good striker that shouldn't be fucking around shooting takedowns on Paddy Pimblett. Let's get on to the next one. Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodrigues. I picked Gregory Rodrigues to win this fight, but this was a lot more dominant than I expected, all right? Gregory Rodrigues, as the rounds progressed, got more and more dominant against Christian Leroy Duncan. He was tossing him around, ragdolling him, beating him up on the ground. There were exchanges on the feet where they were slugging in the pocket, and Gregory Rodrigues was getting the better of him and rocking Christian Leroy Duncan all over the place. And Duncan was doing all right. He was landing some pretty dynamic elbows every now and then, but Rodrigues would just fucking eat them. And I was actually a little bit worried because his chin is not known for being granite. I was thinking maybe Duncan could catch him because he's the faster guy early, but Gregory Rodrigues was eating solid elbows, solid punches, and throwing back punches and bunches, like all heavy clobbering shots, was hurting Christian Leroy Duncan and just kind of dominated him. So, amazing win for Gregory Rodrigues. Another middleweight prospect that has been on a tear, that's on a crazy win streak, that's been putting on good fights. He'll probably get someone that's unranked. He'll probably get like Ikram Aleskarov next. And this is my issue with the middleweight division. Sure, we have people like Imavov that seem to work their way up pretty seamlessly, but if it's not Imavov, if it's not Abu Smagomedov, fair enough, they tried to give Joe Pyfer a bump up in competition as well. It's very rare. More often than not, we don't see people like Gregory Rodrigues get a Marvin Vettori matchup. We don't see people like Anthony Hernandez get a Marvin Vettori matchup. Like, Hernandez is fighting Pereira. Hernandez is on a 6-fight win streak, and he's fighting Michel Pereira. Pereira's on a 3-fight win streak, all right, and he won fights at welterweight, plenty of them, and he's fighting someone outside of the rankings now. So it's like, I just want to see some of these middleweight prospects that are clearly very good get a crack at like a long-time staple in the middleweight division, like a Vettori, like a Hermanson, all right? Maybe a Cannonier. I mean, I know that we've had Cannonier versus Imavov, but it just seems like there's a bit of a weird logjam in the middleweight division outside of the rankings that shouldn't be the case. I don't know what's causing it. I just think maybe it's because a lot of the fighters in that division are inactive in the top 10 and top 15. But I want to see Gregory Rodrigues fight someone high up in the rankings. He's earned it at this point, and his grappling, in my opinion, is always the most impressive part of his game. Like, he's a strong guy, and he's had, I didn't even know this, the commentary mentioned it, but he's had like hundreds of wrestling matches. So very dangerous threat in the middleweight division. Christian Leroy Duncan kind of got bested everywhere in this fight, even on the feet, just by being out-gridded and out-pocket boxed by Gregory Rodrigues. So he's going to have to go back to the drawing board. Let's get on to the next one. Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. Really crafty performance from Arnold Allen. Giga Chikadze looked way better in this fight than he did against Alex Caceres, which is one of the main reasons why I picked against him, because against Caceres, he had a relatively close fight, and Caceres is nowhere near the level of Allen. Giga came out there and looked real fast, was landing the Giga kick, was landing the body kicks, was landing head kicks, was jabbing Arnold Allen up, but Arnold Allen brought the low output back early and was putting tons of pressure on Giga Chikadze, not throwing, but kind of bringing him into this suffocating range where he's forcing Giga Chikadze to throw on the back foot and to be on his bike. And he's every now and then chucking a solid right hand to the body or a jab to the body. And every now and then he would shoot or not shoot anything, but he would throw a body kick. So we had a lot of good investment shots in the first round, in the second round. And at the end of the second round, Allen started to come on strong. Had a couple of big moments in that round. Started busting up the nose of Giga Chikadze and stole that round. And in the third round, all the body shots, the few and far in between body shots that Arnold Allen would throw, but every single one of them made a difference. He ramped that up and just continued to up the pressure and stole the third round as well. So this was a slow start for Arnold Allen, but a calculated slow start. A difficult stylistic matchup for him, I guess, because the kicks were difficult for him to deal with. And Giga Chikadze did pretty well. I mean, listen, I think the second round was very close. It honestly could have gone either way, but I do think Arnold Allen edged it out, did a little bit more damage, and landed a few more strikes at the very end of that round when it was basically even. And Arnold Allen, yet again, gets another win. The only guy that's been able to beat him is Max Holloway, because I think he beat Evloev. So it's a win over Chikadze. It is a win over Evloev, a win over Sadiq Yusuff, a win over Dan Hooker. Arnold Allen, I mean, think about Max Holloway's resume. Max Holloway's resume is aging real well. And Holloway also beat Calvin Kattar. And Giga Chikadze looked good in this fight too. That win's aging real well for Max Holloway, so you already know there's another guy whose wins are aging well. All right? You already know there's another guy whose wins are aging well, and that's Volkanovski. I'm just trolling. You guys knew where that was going, but a really solid win for Arnold Allen. Nothing dominant, but just kind of holding his place in that division. And, you know, he did technically lose his last fight. I thought it was a bullshit decision, but either way, Arnold Allen was coming off of a loss, and he needed a win, and he pulled it off. It was a tricky fight for him, but the calculated slow start, putting a ton of pressure on Giga Chikadze, letting Giga Chikadze kind of empty the gas tank a little bit, and coming on strong in the second and third. Beautiful investment shots early on from Arnold Allen, and he did a really good job, man. So I thought this was a crafty performance from Allen. So let's get on. And who should he fight next? I don't know. Maybe Volkanovski. That could be an interesting one. But, you know, there was a good fight. Giga Chikadze also looked pretty decent in this fight, too, despite him losing. Let's get on to the next one. Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda. Nathaniel Wood looked insanely good in this fight. He out-grappled Daniel Pineda in the beginning of the fight and outstruck him. Pineda probably edged out the third round, but Wood won the second. Wood won the first. The second round, I believe, was a 10-8. Nathaniel Wood got a knockdown in that round. Almost finished Pineda. It was an amazing fight. It was a great scrap. And Nathaniel Wood, someone mentioned this in my stream, but Nathaniel Wood honestly reminded some people of Ilia Topuria with the way that he was throwing his hooks, with the way that he was going to the body and then following up upstairs with hooks, the way that he was standing. I mean, listen, he's kind of undersized for featherweight, but he does kind of remind me of Ilia Topuria sometimes when he's throwing these strikes in the pocket. So I thought it was a great performance. I thought it was one of his best performances. And you know what a good fight would be? Maybe Nathaniel Wood versus Loughran Murphy, all right? Or Nathaniel Wood versus someone like Giga Chikadze could also be a really fun fight. Maybe a Sadiq Yusuff. But I think maybe give Nathaniel Wood someone ranked, okay? I know that he's not on like a crazy streak and he lost to Naimov, but I think he's good enough to at least get a crack at the rankings. Always entertaining, always gonna give us a really good fight on the feet, and yeah, I thought it was a good performance. Let's get on to the next one. Molly McCann, Bruno Brazil. Bruno Brazil was beating up Molly McCann. Win or lose, Molly McCann always has an entertaining performances. So Bruno Brazil was able to win this one, hurting Molly McCann early, kind of embarrassing her early. Molly McCann fought hard, fought well, maybe edged out one of the rounds. I forget which one, but I thought it was a good fight. Jake Hadley versus Cowlin Loughran. People say that if Cowlin Loughran's menacing grin, menacing mug was a double jab, he would be the winner of this fight, but it unfortunately wasn't. Even though Cowlin Loughran did let his hands go, even though he pushed the pace, and I thought he would win this fight, I thought he would move forward, and Jake Hadley is on a downwards trajectory, and he's taking this on short notice, and Cowlin Loughran's going to freaking eat a couple of punches to land 4 of his own. Jake Hadley was too fast for him. Lighter man skill. All right, moving up from the flyweight division, taking this on short notice. Cowlin Loughran's boxing is also not that crisp. He's a little bit stiff with the way he throws punches. He's kind of like a bantamweight Marvin Vettori. Kind of relies on his toughness, thudding punches, but Jake Hadley just a little bit too slick for him and actually turned up the volume. He was throwing lots of kicks on the back foot, but he was also adding in lots of volume, and he was pretty effortlessly jabbing up Cowlin Loughran, countering him with right hands. So I thought it was a great performance from Jake Hadley, whose back was against the wall going into this because he has been on a loss streak. So a really good performance from Jake Hadley. And I think that he should stay in the bantamweight division. I think that this could be a good division for him. Okay, because he looked really fast. Next up, Manel Kape versus Muhammad Mokaev. Listen, I know people are criticizing this fight. It was a boring fight. It did not meet our expectations. All right, the build up to this was like a Conor versus Khabib at flyweight. Not really, but it was sort of a Walmart version, at least still fun. And the actual fight, like Yoel Romero and Adesanya. But I am exaggerating a little bit because even though this was a somewhat boring fight, Muhammad Mokaev still kept it standing for the most part, did not shoot 100 takedowns over and over again. I think he made it a point to not shoot takedowns because he was fighting for a contract opportunity, which we'll talk about in a minute. He stood with Manel Kape. He outstruck him in the first round. All right, was throwing more output, was throwing a lot more volume. Manel Kape, it took him like 2.5 minutes to even throw a strike. So Muhammad Mokaev just won this fight by just doing more. Manel Kape lost this fight by omitting opportunities. Like, there were moments where Muhammad Mokaev was stumbling up against the fence and he looked like he was off balance and he wasn't in a good position, and Manel Kape would just pressure him, feint, and nothing would ever come of it. He would never let his hands go. Manel Kape didn't let his hands go. I know that he broke his toe in the second round, but he lost the first round, and he barely threw anything in the first round. And yes, he had a moment at the end of the first round, but it wasn't a knockdown. It was like an off-balance moment with Muhammad Mokaev. It wasn't counted as a knockdown. And one flurry of success does not win you the round against a guy that is consistently throwing. I think at a certain point in this fight, it seems like Muhammad Mokaev had landed more grazing head kicks that sort of missed but just grazed Manel Kape than Manel Kape even threw fucking punches. Listen, it wasn't a great fight, but I don't think you can be so overly critical of Muhammad Mokaev that stood with a guy that was supposedly so much better than him on the feet, and he just kicked him at range, which is something that people can do in MMA. You can kick at range, and he out-volumed him. And yeah, Manel Kape broke his toe, but that's not like he broke his orbital bone. It's not like he tore his ACL. His movement, yeah, it was definitely hindered a little bit, but he still looked better in the third round in moments, and in the second round in moments, than he did in the first, where his toe was fine. So I thought Muhammad Mokaev, sure, he didn't look that impressive, but, you know, I thought he did what he needed to do to win. Manel Kape, very disappointing performance. I think his performance was more disappointing because, again, he's this guy that's supposed to go out there and the grappling's going to be tough, but on the feet, you should be able to school Muhammad Mokaev. And we just hardly saw this guy throw any punches. Muhammad Mokaev, I believe this was the last fight on his contract. Dana White basically gave him the boot at the post-fight press conference and said, listen, I'm sure the PFL will love their new undefeated flyweight. Basically saying he's no longer with us, like the PFL can take him. And I think that maybe Dana White's just a little bit salty that Belal won. All right, I'm sure he didn't want Belal to win tonight. Maybe he knows that all the Aspinall fans are going to be giving him a hard time in the buildup of Jones and Stipe. And I think that a part of it is maybe he's using Muhammad Mokaev as a scapegoat to take his frustration out on. But to be fair, there were some issues going on earlier this week. This fight was originally supposed to be on the main card. It was pulled from the main card. There were some difficulties going on with the UFC, Dana White, and Muhammad Mokaev and his manager. So it's probably got a little bit to do with that as well. It's probably a little bit of both. Dana White's a little bit angry, and you know, they were having some disputes. I don't know what those disputes were about. Maybe Muhammad Mokaev was demanding $1 million to show for his fights. Listen, I don't think the UFC should get rid of him. I mean, he's undefeated. Sure, he's not the most entertaining fighter, but you know what? Manel Kape was the one that was less entertaining than Muhammad Mokaev in this fight. And Muhammad Mokaev is still young. He still has potential. And I think it's just a guy where, you know, if you're keeping around some fighters that are 2-4 in the UFC, right? You keep around an Ode Osborne, or, I don't know, insert the name of a fighter that just has like a mediocre career, but the UFC keeps around. Why not keep around Muhammad Mokaev? I get it. They don't want him to become a champion. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer. But I don't know. I don't think they should cut him. That's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Overall, the fight was a disappointment. So, you know, it is what it is. Open Elliott versus Preston Parsons. Boring fight. Sam Patterson versus Kiefer Crosby. Sam Patterson, second submission in a row. I believe this was what, a head and arm triangle over Kiefer Crosby. Tapped him out in the first round. Sam Patterson, I know he got finished in his first UFC fight, but he's done nothing but dominate since. 2 first-round submissions in a row for Sam Patterson. Lighter man skill, moving up into the welterweight division from lightweight. Got the submission game advantage, has the speed advantage on the ground and on the feet. Not a surprise that he got this one done. I picked him by submission. Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin earned his freedom tonight, all right? I was saying Mick Parkin's had 4 or 3 really snooze fest sort of decisions in a row. He's the, inside leg kick type of guy. Move on the outside, inside leg kick, maybe a pitter-pat jab every once in a while. And I was saying that they were going to have the jets firing up outside the arena when Mick Parkin was fighting. If he were to lose or if he were to win, if it was boring, then he would have gotten sent to the Apex. Mick Parkin actually got a KO. It is crazy that he got a KO. To be fair, it's Lucas Brzezinski, but Mick Parkin's been fighting Lucas Brzezinski's. Like, this is the level of comp he's been fighting anyway. It's not like it's a step up in competition. At heavyweight, you basically don't take a step up in competition until you get to the rankings. Everyone outside the rankings is basically the same, except for Shamil Blabgaziev. Shamil's actually solid, but great KO for Mick Parkin. He's going to be in the UK, he gets to stay with Tom Aspinall and Tom Aspinall's team. So just a really good win for Mick Parkin. And you know what? I'm looking forward to his next fight. And maybe he could become like a, like a fucking funny, a funny heavyweight in the UK scene, right? We were talking about Mick Parkin, the legendary Mick Parkin. He's actually kind of maybe has a chance to become a legendary fighter now. Great KO. He's off to a good start. He's off to a fresh start. And that was the card. That was the card. I thought it was a great card. I thought it was a pretty entertaining card. At times the crowd was dead, but it was just because it was so late. So, I mean, I wasn't that surprised to see the crowd dead. The UK crowd's normally a lot more amped, but of course it was really late. They did get pretty hyped for Paddy. They got hyped for Tom. They weren't so hyped for Belal and Leon. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That is it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.